everyone. Welcome to another casual conversation. I'm here with my partner at Black Mountain Investment Group, Kyle Niedzwiecki, and we're here to chat about the latest things going on in crypto, markets, and Web3 generally. Um, Kyle, I know we saw a lot today. We were just chatting a bit before we started to record about how much we're seeing going on in the AI space. Two big stories today. Um, we saw today that the CIA is building its own AI chatbot for investigation purposes. And we also see that the Writers Guild strike has ended, with the new deal providing that AI generated material is not allowed to undermine a writer's credit. A writer can choose to use AI for writing services as long as their client consents and the writer complies with the client's company policies. And you cannot require a writer to use AI software when performing writing services, which of course is an interesting one, right? Because their efficiency and their ability to create more higher quality content just generally at a much higher rate will be limited by the ability to not force them to use AI technology. So really interested to see what Kyle thinks about that as a technologist. I know what I think, and I think it's not a great outcome, frankly.
Why do you say it's not a great outcome?
I don't like that we can't require writers in connection with their writing services to use AI. I think we should be able to hire people to use AI or not use AI. Like, I don't see why the client wouldn't be able to require that as part of the writing service. And to me, that's just inefficiency, basically. Like, I don't understand why one would want to hire someone that wouldn't agree to use AI. And maybe it's just not a practical concern. Like, I don't know how these transactions typically come about anyway, because I assume those who want someone who's going to use AI will find that person anyway. But it's just very confusing to me that you wouldn't be able to like include in the contract that they're gonna use AI to support themselves such that they can maximize efficiency.
Definitely. Well, it's funny you brought that up because I actually had a problem with this with the AI text checker checking to see how much of a probability this blog article or this piece of content is written with AI versus human, versus like humanly generated with emotions and that great stuff. So with Google AdSense, and if you're making money online with your blogs, say affiliate links, or again, Google AdSense, partnerships, advertisement revenue, you want to be able to reach more eyeballs. So you want to be able to get number one on Google search. And in saying that, you can't just hire somebody on Fiverr like I thought you could and write an article for $1, which basically what he did was one of two things. He either wrote the article in the prompt with ChatGPT, copied and pasted it over, and I still saw like the gray background, you know, when he copied and pasted over, or he copied and pasted word for word with pictures of a previous or like already existing article online of that topic. So I try to hire a Fiverr individual for my website, SkateDecks, to ease the load of writing these articles because I have about 200 that I need to publish and touch up. I thought that I could use outsource it and use AI. This case, I can't do that because it's going to ruin my domain authority and it's going to ruin my credibility. But there is a sense that some people would want to use this, say, for data management, data entry, stuff like that, figuring out, just easy questions, naming the 50 states of America instead of Googling it and then going onto a list online. But that's just my experience with it. And it's same with coding and, doing school essays and term papers and stuff like that. It's just not to a point right now where you can depend on that. And it doesn't sound like AI because you can just throw it in instead of doing a turnitin.com. You can do an AI text checker and you can check the probability of the amount of text that's AI versus human. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I actually just think that everyone should be able to use AI, and then therefore it's level setting. And then how good your essay will be would be based on how well you edit, which is really true already. It's just a additional tool, just like I think of it no more or less than a typewriter, or a computer, like it's just it isn't going to produce the final um product that we would want to sell, but it will produce or turn in the case of schoolwork and the like, but it does create a baseline from which one can work, and I think that actually will be a source of efficiency. And if we prohibit the use of it, that would be bad, I think, at actually seeing what we're truly capable of. Because I guess what I mean is that if you use all the technology and it does help you a lot, but then if you use your own mind and your own thoughts and your own research and your own proprietary skills to like improve that text, presumably the end result in the aggregate would be better than what you might have done if you just started on your own. And I think that is a lot more interesting to me, and finding out what that road looks like is a lot more interesting generally to like propelling us forward from a technological perspective than it is to just essentially prohibit people from using the technology in connection with those activities, and then stop them from kind of gaining those benefits. Like, so it's just I think it is kind of going to take a really long time for AI to plausibly like replace a person. So I just don't think that that's even an issue. It's more about just where your baseline is and starting out in a place where you could potentially get a little bit further along as an end state, because that's just generally all what we're all searching for. So that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it. And if the tool exists, it will be used, whether it's to cheat or not. So to me, it's like leveling the playing field seems more interesting than trying to prohibit an activity that we know will just be flagrantly disregarded.
Definitely. Um, what do you think about Amazon rivaling OpenAI with their AI startup Anthropic?
I mean, I like that all the big tech companies are trying to get into AI. I just wonder if some are better placed than others, and I just don't know which those would be, frankly. So, but interesting nonetheless. And I mean, presumably all of them having a lot of machine learning and AI technology integrated in different ways for their different use cases. Um, so it makes sense that they all might want to have a tool like that, and maybe it could improve their all the various businesses. So I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm just not sure it's necessary, and it seems to be getting quite crowded.
Hmm. It does seem to be getting quick credit. It's like another dating app or another Lyft or another Uber. You know what I mean? Like we already have so many ride hailing apps, food delivery apps, dating apps. The last thing we need in AI right now, I think, is another AI powered text analyzing chatbot, just like OpenAI's ChatGPT. Because we have that, we have Bard, we have several others, and then people are making their own spin-offs of OpenAI's ChatGPT into their own apps, into their own websites, embedding it elsewhere on the internet and creating their own projects based on that. So I think we should be developing beyond text analyzing chatbots. What do you think, Eric?
Absolutely, and like training and using different training methods. And Kyle and I have been talking about this for a long time, but a training method that I find interesting is more about solving problems in real world settings. That would be a lot more interesting, and I think that would that would really ascertain what exactly we have accomplished on a scale of 1 to Turing uh passing the Turing test, you know? So I think right now we're actually much further along than people think. I'm sorry, much less far along than people think, because I think actually it's really hard to train AI bots. If I were to guess, to solve the same problems even mice can solve in a maze. So I would like to see a lot more of those types of tests that are experiential and that are not necessarily long language intensive. So like I think that long language to me just feels like what people call, like, colloquially, book knowledge. And I don't think that that's how you can teach an inorganic organism to think. So I just don't think it would be properly called artificial intelligence, right? Like, it's just really, really helpful tech. But from my perspective, like, even like just definitionally, it's incorrect, because AI kind of assumes that you have already passed the Turing test, which hasn't been yet accomplished. So like, I think AI is kind of an inspirational goal that we should try to accomplish. But like, just like Kyle has some really strong opinions about how we use terminology in ETH. Some of the artificial intelligence terminology drives me crazy because I just think it's very inaccurate about where we actually are.
Interesting. So what do you think it should be called instead of AI or artificial?
I think like when they called it machine learning, which I think it still is, like, that to me is more where we're at. Like, we're at machine learning. We're not really at artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is when we is an accomplishment that hopefully will accomplish that mankind will do in this generation, which I think is very likely. It just hasn't happened yet.
Mhm.
Even though these tools are incredible and they really, really help, I just don't see it. That's not the end state. And it just doesn't have any of the interpersonal elements. Like, to speak to more of what you were saying, Kyle, like, of course you can tell AI wrote it because the interpersonal elements are always missing. And so it's like, and what you learn from them. And really that's what I'm trying to get at. Like the experiential part of life is actually very important. And I think very good teacher of various lessons. And obviously we all learn this as part of our education, and then those who are educated to be educators learn this even more. But I think I think that's kind of what we're missing in machine learning, let's call it.
Hmm.
And I would just like to see more interesting experiments, like, I guess why everyone's running down this long language model, it doesn't seem very interesting to me at all. I would rather um have them solve complex math equations and things like that. I think we're just kind of they're pointing them at interesting tasks for sure, and tasks that having a big vocabulary, let's call it, or book knowledge, encyclopedic knowledge would be helpful for. But the problem is that they're not really good at, like, I wouldn't think that they could ever deliver something more than than the sum of the parts. And so I think that's what we want to see. Like, we want to see like a build from interesting and helpful um junior analyst or junior contributor to, like, replacing some of the more thoughtful senior contributors to a project. And I just don't think we're there yet. Or even, and I say replace, but more like usable for that type of thought is really what I mean. And I just don't and that would be super interesting too to see. But I would love to see even the version of machine learning that exists today proliferated more and used more and not shunned the way the government's been proposing. I mean, in some places even proposing licensure, and Elon Musk Elon Musk is proposing licensure, and so are the rest of the tech billionaires that met with Congress on it. And to me, I in a closed session, by the way, of course. And frankly, like that just sounds great for them, right?
Hmm.
Because licenses are expensive and they have money, but it doesn't really sound great for the startup community and for AI generally, and for how we all know talent to um, rise from those entrepreneurial places. So I just think it's the wrong way to approach that piece of it. I don't think licensure should be necessary, and I think we need to be a little bit more creative about how we think about um, contributions and how we think about the way AI impacts contributions. Like if something perhaps, and I think it could be a pretty easy like like red line kind of bright line kind of rule. Like you essentially need a rule that says, hey, we're going to sort these into um, IP infringing and non-IP infringing. And if the submission is IP infringing, then the output is IP infringing. Like that would be one really easy way to really get to the point and say, hey, this is obviously infringing. And maybe that's the best answer. I don't know. I think we need to iterate a bit more, and I don't even think that we're ready at all to like get to a place where this space would be regulated. And I'm not entirely sure that we need to regulate it. It's just it doesn't it doesn't appear to me very different than the internet, and the internet is largely unregulated to this
Hmm.
day. So to me, regulation doesn't seem necessarily appropriate, and I would be concerned that essentially that could result in a really, really large failing of the US if we were to hyper regulate a space and before we really have the true wave of young entrepreneurs entering the space. Like just as we're about to get that, that's going to send all these people away from here, I would think. I mean, no other nation has actually proposed any rules, and the other nations that seem to be proposing rules certainly aren't proposing licensure. They're just essentially indicating that they're open for business, like the UK, which I mean is a very different stance than what the US is clearly taking. So it's disappointing to see for sure, and it kind of reminds me of Web3, it's like the same problem again.
Hmm. Well, imagine if they made a closed internet instead of an open one and try to regulate it. Imagine the amount of technological innovation that would occur on the comparison of those two, the closed internet versus the open internet. So it's closed sourced code versus open source code. And AI, just like with all the smart contracts are now with all the cryptos, it should just be open source. There should be a whole wave of transparency and the whole AI wave to bring in, like you were saying, the new entrepreneurs, or the young entrepreneurs in America into this space without hyper regulating it is to just let it fly and keep it open sourced without going through any hurdles or having to apply for any licenses to be able to create and use this technology.
Yeah, and it just doesn't seem appropriate at all to me. We have a way of dealing with this problem, I guess, is really where I come from on it. Like sourcing people, footnotes, just do that. This article, and like with a clear site, like a clear disclosure that this article was created using AI, like, and then sourcing the sources, citing the sources in the same way you would in an academic institution like that. That to me seems totally sufficient. Um, And so that's why I find it a little bit strange that we're even considering it, because there's certainly a way to think about this that works in our existing system and framework. And I always shy away from any kind of implications or let's call it any attempts to redesign the legal system for a new technology unless you have to, right? And in
Mm.
many cases you don't. And I think AI is kind of one of those cases where you really don't. You just need to let the common law approach evolve the way it always has. And I think that the answers are very clear. If you're sourcing them from material that is not your own. So what if you use your own content? Like, and I guess this is what I would say to those, like, what if you submit, like you write 4 or 5 essays and you're like, you know what? I think if I included these all as one as synthesized essay might be a better essay, and you just used AI to do that and then edited that, like what would that result in? Because obviously that's all just your material. So I
Mhm.
think it's more of like a attribution problem, and I think it's one that we know how to solve with the existing laws. It's more about figuring out different ways to ensure that source materials remain available after the creation of the the new result.
Mhm.
Which, I mean,
Well,
that maybe could be a requirement, retain source materials so that copyright and other IP rights can be protected and the like. But I also think that um, that might be less advantageous for the space, and we don't really need to make that determination right this second. It's just not yet popular enough, I would think. And there's a lot of people who probably don't even know what AI is, and a lot of people in the population that aren't really using AI actively in their everyday lives. And so I would not want to make any snap decisions before we kind of see a bit more adoption and mainstream use, because the way people use things should really impact the way we regulate it and think about it, and we don't really know that yet.
like you were saying with combining the 5 articles into one for your term essays, that would work because that would generate human output instead of AI text-based output. I think that's the problem, and there are programs out there that utilize ChatGPT but make it sound or trained it with making it sound like human when it's talking with human emotion with exclamation points and question marks and one word sentences dot 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 stuff like that instead of just numbered list or bullet points with the conclusion the whole AI ChatGPT style. So I think that's the only problem there is with the writing, but other than that, it's huge lifesaver with the writing because if you're stuck or you have writer's block, you can just ask it any question and you can kind of use it almost as like a Google search for another idea or just like kind of sparking the idea. You just can't copy it directly. You have to add your sort of human output, and that's how I think it's going to be in the future too. So I don't think AI is going to necessarily replace anybody. It's just going to kind of work in tandem with everybody. Because right now, as it is, it's just a ChatGPT style um, AI chatbot that may have certain features. Like this one may find the sources of the original text or the original link. This one may transcribe all of the information on the first page of Google. This one may transcribe an entire YouTube video, stuff like that. It's all text-based ChatGPT style stuff, programs, but with another feature.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of when everyone just launched cryptos
Hmm.
in connection with like the ICO bubble. And it just seems like everyone has their great recommendation for how dentists should have their own token, and and
And Bitcoin.
yeah, and then how everyone should have their own specific currency for their field and the like. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And everyone had Bitcoin, but a little better, including Bitcoin Jesus himself. So like, I think it's just a lot more interesting once you kind of integrate that all into something that is actually helpful, more so than what we already have, which ChatGPT is pretty good at. Like, I don't know that you really need 16 of these different ChatGPTs so much as you need the next step, whatever that might be.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, and none of them are doing that. They're all just like racing to like create the same thing, which
Mhm.
is already open source technology. So I just don't even know why. Like, what was
Well,
the point?
history repeats itself, and it was the same thing that we saw with the 2017 crypto ICO wave. And I guess you could say 2021 was the NFT hype cycle. So we'll see. 2025 will be something else. We'll see. We've already done the coins, we've already done the NFTs. It could be real world assets. We'll see. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But on that,
The exchanges all have chatbots too
everybody
already.
does. You want to
Yeah,
know who else I was just going to bring up? I saw the CIA, the United States Central Intelligence Agency, is planning to build and deploy its own Chat GPT style AI bot for investigations.
I still like, so I when I saw that this morning, I just was like, what is this thing gonna say? Like I mean, because like I imagine the CIA is really, really good at training people how to investigate people. So I mean, it's gonna be very good at it, I would think. If they actually use their own um professionals to train it, I presumably would be very good at it.
Mhm. I assume it'd probably be really, really great, even possibly better than OpenAI. Although that bot is probably going to be privately sourced to just people that work for the government. And I heard that the tool also um, closely follows the privacy laws in the United States. So it's adhering to all of the laws of the United States, and it's fully legal and operational. They could do a thing there where everybody has to comply to what they're kind of doing, and they kind of set the guidelines. So then OpenAI and Bard and all these other ones, and Anthropic, which is Amazon's new AI startup that they invest into, all of them would have to comply with what the CIA's ChatGPT style bot is doing.
100%. And I mean, the CIA style bot is also, I don't know. I mean, that to me is a lot more interesting, like building something for a use case that's specific and not sharing it and using it as proprietary software. Like that seems a lot more interesting than a lot of the other AI builds that we've seen so far, which are just kind of dupes. It's building something towards a specific purpose, and which is, I mean, finally something we're starting to see only now, right? Is like specialization of blockchains, with some being better for gaming, some being better for commercial, some being better for institutional. Like, and still it's not super clear that's where we're heading, but we're starting to see small indications of that, I would say. And I mean, so I can only imagine how long it will take for AI, hopefully faster, but I do think we're in it for the long haul anyway, and I do think that will probably take a little bit of time. The specialization, because there's so much value in having your own chatbot just for purposes of driving traffic to your website. I think, and I think that's why they're all trying to grab the opportunity in the same way everyone wanted to be a layer one, um, like for a long period of time, because you could get a premium as the ecosystem's token, as opposed to being just a coin within the network that anyone could create, and therefore was only a sub part of the ecosystem. Um, and so I think that's also super interesting. Like, as cryptos kind of enter into the specialization um, portion of their growth, AI is kind of proliferating exactly the same way as we saw in cryptos in 2017. And it's very, very indicative of perhaps what will be another major adoption cycle.
Hopefully. I think it could be one of the proponents to bring it to a major adoption cycle. That is for sure.
And I think like what's also interesting, and like we talk about a lot at Black Mountain, is just the uses of AI, crypto, NFTs collectively is very interesting, and there's so much there to unpack. It's not very clear how that tech stack will eventually work today, but the confluence is kind of a very interesting situation, like creating the right incentives for an AI chatbot, for instance, could be a really interesting thing. And I think crypto is really uniquely positioned to help with that, given the incentives around decentralized communities that we've already seen built in the space. So it should be really, really interesting.
Should be really, really interesting.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation on AI. I know I did. Kyle really helps me think through a lot of these points every day. And Eli, our other partner, often is very, very AI, a huge AI proponent as well, and someone who really advocates for that space significantly. So we love AI here at Black Mountain, and we're excited to see what's next for it.